Hey guys. Tonight we're heading into a place most of us couldn't even begin to handle, the cold stone corridors of a Victorian workhouse. The lamps outside flicker in the misty air, and everything smells faintly of soot, wet horse, and boiled cabbage. The sky above is the color of old dishwater, heavy and low. Your boots are soaked through before you even reach the gate, squelching with every step. Your stomach is as hollow as the street behind you, emptied hours ago. And echoing with regret. You're hungry, tired, and just a little scared. And it's about to get much worse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love knowing where in the world we're dreaming together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice about the workhouse is how it doesn't want to be noticed. It squats behind high walls like it's hiding something, or everything. There's a massive iron gate, blackened with time and soot. And above it, a stone plaque carved with the words Union Workhouse, 1851. No welcome, no warmth. Just a warning etched in stone. You stand there, hesitant, feet numb, trying to summon the courage to knock. A bell pull dangles to the side, and you tug it with the same nervousness you'd use to pull the pin on a grenade. Somewhere inside, a clanking sound echoes, like a chain being dragged across tile. The door swings open. A man in a rough coat eyes you like he's seen too many like you before. Which, let's be honest, he probably has. He doesn't ask your name. Just looks you up and down, takes in your frayed coat, your damp socks, the faint smell of desperation that's been following you for days. You hear your own breath, louder than it should be, fogging in the winter air. Applyin' for relief? He asks. You nod, your throat too tight to speak. You expected sympathy, or maybe even just acknowledgement. What you get is a grunt and a gesture. Inside, don't dawdle. You step in. Immediately, the air thickens. Not with warmth. No, there's no fire. Just the sour damp of bodies and the lingering scent of old coal smoke. The floor is stone. Your boots click against it, and the echo follows you like a ghost. To your right, there's a narrow hallway lined with wooden benches. Several figures sit there already. Heads low, hands clasped in their laps. No one meets your eyes. They all look like you. Or what you'll probably look like in a week. The porter leads you down a side corridor. The walls are whitewashed, but the grime seeps through like secrets that won't stay buried. Your breath fogs the air, and you catch the faint scent of vinegar, disinfectant. Or at least their idea of it. You'll be seen by the master. Don't speak unless spoken to. The porter says, as if it matters. You nod again, because that's all you seem capable of now. Nod, walk, follow orders. At the end of the hall is a heavy wooden door with a brass plate, W. Grimshaw. Master. You already hate the name. Grim, of course. Inside, the man at the desk barely looks up. He's in his 50s, you think, though the stiffness of his expression makes him look older. Like he was born stern. A tall candle flickers beside him, casting shadows across the piles of papers on his desk. He picks up a pen, dips it, and begins asking questions. Name, age, place of birth, reason for applying. He doesn't glance up until he reaches the last one. You answer in a voice that doesn't feel like your own. Something about unemployment, your father's illness, the lack of bread in the cupboard. It's not a unique story. And you know that. He scribbles something down and finally looks at you. Not into your eyes, though, at your shoulders. Your hands. Assessing. Measuring. There's rules here. No spirits. No backtalk. And no idleness. You'll earn your board. He signs the page and stamps it with a loud thunk that sounds more like a jail sentence than an approval. You'll be separated. Men and women don't mix. He nods to the porter. Strip and cleanse. You blink. I'm sorry? Strip. The porter says again. Now. And just like that, your identity is no longer yours. You're led to a washroom. And room is generous. It's more of a chamber with stone floors. A drain in the center. And a trough of water that's got more in common with a winter pond than anything meant for hygiene. A matron stands by with a brush. Her hands red and cracked. She doesn't smile. She doesn't even blink. You undress under her stare. Every layer peels off your dignity. Your shirt, your trousers, even your socks, wet and clinging, are pulled away like old bandages. She douses you with a bucket that hits your skin like icy pebbles. You gasp, more out of shock than cold, and she starts scrubbing. Your skin protests, turning raw. The brush doesn't care. While you shiver, she eyes a small cut on your knee and mutters something about cleaning it with lye. You hope she's joking. You really do. Then come the shears. Your hair, already unkempt, is hacked away with the delicacy of a sheep shearing. Tufts fall to the floor like tiny flags of surrender. There's no mirror, but you know you don't look like you anymore. And finally, the tunic. It's rough, coarse, that same scratchy wool they give to everyone. The color is something between brown and gray, like porridge left out too long. It hangs awkwardly, but it fits, and that's all that matters now. Fitting in, becoming one of them. You're led to the men's dormitory. Past more silent figures in identical clothing, all of whom seem too tired to care. The room has rows of narrow beds, more like wooden shelves with thin straw mattresses. No pillows, no sheets, just you, the wool, and the ever-present sound of someone coughing in the corner. You sit down, feeling the stiffness in your knees. They creak. When did they start creaking? You weren't this old yesterday. Or maybe you were. The tunic makes everyone the same age. And just as your body starts to relax, barely, there's a sharp knock on the door. Time for your first meal. The corridor to the dining hall is long and dim, lit by gas lamps that hiss like tired snakes. The flickering light makes the walls ripple. And for a moment you wonder if the whole building is breathing, slow, stale, and disapproving. You follow the line of other workers, all trudging forward in a procession of identical tunics and downcast eyes. Your feet stick slightly with each step, soles damp from the washroom, the chill biting up through the stone and settling deep in your spine. You try to rub warmth into your arms, but the tunic just scrapes your skin like it's trying to remind you who's in charge now. The dining hall smells indistinct, a little like wet wood, a little like boiled grain, a lot like surrender. The benches are set in rigid rows, and you're herded into place with the gentle firmness of someone rearranging livestock. No one speaks. There's a kind of reverent hush. But it's not holy, it's just hungry. Then it comes. The slop. You expected something worse, somehow, and also better. A tin bowl is dropped in front of you with a dull clang. Inside, a grayish gruel that seems to have the consistency of warm wallpaper paste. The smell is faintly metallic, like old spoons left in water too long. No one serves it with care. A man with a ladle just sloshes. Steps. Sloshes. Steps. You notice his thumb is bandaged and try not to think about why. Your spoon is already dented. Probably by design. You lift it, stir the contents out of habit more than hope. There's a lump, possibly a turnip, possibly a mistake, and then you take a bite. It's warm. That's the nicest thing you can say about it. The taste is something between bland and actively disappointing, like chewing a memory of oats someone once described to you. Still, your stomach doesn't care. You eat, because you're starving, and because everyone else is doing the same. A few folks glance up, but not many. A young boy 3 seats down makes a tiny sound when he finds a bit of onion. An older man beside you has no teeth, so he just gums at the mush silently. Every movement feels slow, dreamlike, except the swallowing, which is frantic, like everyone's afraid the food might vanish mid-bite. Historically speaking, the gruel wasn't quite as horrifying as cartoons make it seem, but it was never meant to be satisfying. Just sustaining. Barely. Government records from the 1850s detail rations down to the ounce. Oatmeal, suet, maybe a bit of barley if someone was feeling festive. One historian claimed that workers averaged just over 1.500 calories a day, enough to stay alive. Not enough to thrive. Others argue whether even that number is generous, especially in winter. And here's your quirky tidbit: at one point, workhouse menus were standardized across entire counties to prevent workhouse hopping, meaning people wouldn't leave one for another just because the food was better. Imagine a life where switching prisons for slightly warmer porridge was a legitimate strategy. As you chew your second spoonful, your jaw starts to ache, not from effort, but from the tension of holding everything in. The hunger, the fear, the quiet grief of realizing this is your life now. There's no waitress, no seconds, no, "May I see the menu?" There's just a ladle and the question of whether the turnip was intentional. And then the bell rings. It's not loud, just sharp. One single clang that slices through the room like a commandment. Instantly, spoons drop. Some bowls still have food in them, but no one dares take another bite. You swallow quickly and stand, your knees barking in protest. That floor is cold, and the stone doesn't forgive. You file out in silence. Again, the line snakes down another corridor, and the chamber pot smell returns, sharp and sour. You breathe through your mouth, which only helps slightly, because now the taste clings to your tongue. You make a note never to breathe again in the dining corridor. You're led back toward the dormitory, but not to your bed. Not yet. The porter gestures to a bucket and a rag. "Cleaning duty," he says, as if you've won a prize. You're new. Everyone does their part. You nod, of course. What else can you do? The next hour blurs. You scrub walls already stained beyond saving. Your hands turn red, then pink, then raw. You kneel, stoop, stretch, and wipe. Your back protests like an old man writing angry letters to the editor. And that same sour smell sticks to your tunic. You'll carry it to bed. You'll wake up with it in your throat. It is, in a way, your new cologne. At one point, a girl passes by in a gray dress identical to your tunic. She looks maybe 15. She's carrying linens, eyes low, her shoulders curled inward like a leaf folding into itself. You wonder what her story is. But you don't ask. No one asks. You hear someone gagging around the corner, violently. When you peek, it's an old man slumped by a chamber bucket. The porter's already dragging him upright. "No dying here," he mutters. "There's a place for that." You pretend you didn't hear it. You pretend you're not afraid of what he meant. As the sky darkens outside, though you only know because the hallway dims, you're finally dismissed. Back to the dormitory. Back to that narrow shelf of a bed. The mattress doesn't remember softness. The straw pokes through like impatient splinters. You lie down, trying not to think. You shift once, twice. Your knees ache. Your hips bark. That meal, that gray paste, sits uneasily in your gut. You wonder what would happen if you threw it up. Probably punishment. Maybe no meal tomorrow. Maybe a different kind of chore. And just as your breathing starts to even out, your eyes beginning to flutter shut, a voice near you coughs, wet and close and sharp. Then another, a symphony of sickness. There's no escape from it. You turn to the wall and press your hands beneath your cheek. It's rough, cold, slightly sticky. You decide not to ask why. And just as you drift, half asleep, half frozen, the bell rings again. Your first dawn is about to begin. You wake up before the sun does, not because anyone calls you, but because the cold has crept under your tunic and coiled itself around your spine like a bitter, invisible snake. Your limbs ache. Your jaw is clenched. The straw poking through your mattress has left tiny, invisible tattoos along your side. Someone coughs again. Maybe the same man from last night. Maybe someone new. You've already lost track. That's the thing no one tells you about the workhouse. Time flattens. Day and night are not so much opposites as they are gray twins who take turns sitting on your chest. You sit up slowly. Your knees groan. and your neck cracks as if rusted. The room smells worse in the morning, stale breath, sweat, old wool, and the ever-present perfume of the chamber pot tucked in the corner. The one no one dares acknowledge. You shuffle toward the wash basin, where two other men already stand, splashing water on their faces with the dead-eyed focus of people not trying to get clean, just trying to feel something. The water is icy, not cold, icy, like it's been kept in a glacier just for this moment. You splash it against your skin, and it hits like regret, sharp, fast, unforgettable. Your hands shake, and the droplets cling to your face like teardrops you're too tired to make. There's no towel, of course. Just the sleeves of your tunic, already stiff from yesterday's grime. You dab your cheeks and return to your bed to make it, which is a generous term for flattening the straw and brushing away the clumps. One corner has a suspicious stain. You look away. Then it's time to line up. Again, you haven't even eaten yet, but you're being shuffled like cards toward the chores board, a wooden slab with little chalk notations that determine your fate for the day. Your name is already there. It's written slightly crooked, but it's yours. The task? Floor scrubbing. You follow the others through a hallway that smells sharply of lye and boiled starch. There's a cupboard filled with battered brushes and buckets that still hold the ghosts of old soap. You grab one and descend the stairs to the ground floor, where long stone corridors stretch out like veins. Here's your first real taste of work. Not labor, not a task. Work. The floor is uneven and cold. Your knees sink into it, and the brush is heavy in your hand. You dip it into the bucket and scrub, watching a thin film of dirt swirl in the water like smoke. The brush grates against the stone, a sound somewhere between sandpaper and complaint. You're not alone. Dozens of others work alongside you, men and boys and a few with faces so blank. You're not sure if they're scrubbing or dreaming. One man near you mutters under his breath, something about rain. Maybe. Or rats. You pretend you don't hear him. There's a strange comfort in the repetition. Scrub. Dip. Scrub. The motion numbs you. Your fingers redden. Your knuckles crack. Your back hums with pain. Low and steady, like a distant drum. Historically, the workhouse floors were meant to be sanitary, and this meant constant scrubbing. Reports from the era detail how inmates spent hours polishing hallways that would be dirty again by sundown. Some reformers argued this was pointless, bordering on cruelty. Others claimed it built character. Historians still debate whether the obsessive cleaning was hygienic necessity or just another method of control. And here's your strange tidbit. Some workhouses added chalk lines on the floor, if your section didn't gleam white by inspection. You scrubbed it again, with the same brush, with the same water, sometimes until your knuckles bled. You can feel that now. The brush tears at your skin like it's trying to strip not just dirt, but memory. Your tunic clings damply to your chest, soaked in sweat and water and something else you try not to name. The hours crawl. The windows are too high to see out of. Occasionally, a supervisor passes by, his boots echoing sharply against your freshly scrubbed stone. He says nothing, just watches. Sometimes he nods, sometimes not. His approval means nothing. His disapproval means another hour on your knees. Eventually, a whistle sounds. It's not loud, but it's a gift. You stand, slowly. Every joint objects. You stretch just enough to remember you have muscles. And pain. And some vague longing for something called tea. Though here it's just weak broth served in a tin mug that's never quite clean. The break is brief. You're not allowed to sit. Just lean against the wall and sip. The liquid is warm. Barely. And it tastes like overboiled hay. But your stomach accepts it gratefully. Your hands shake slightly from the effort of holding the cup. You look at them. Your hands. They used to be yours, capable of writing, or holding, or building. Now they're red, chafed, alien. You flex your fingers slowly and realize you've already begun to forget how they felt before the brush. There's a boy beside you, maybe 12. His eyes are rimmed with shadows too deep for his age. He holds his mug with both hands and drinks like it's something sacred. When he catches you watching, he doesn't smile, just nods. A silent agreement. We are still here. That moment, tiny, fleeting, feels more human than anything else today. And then the break is over. Back to the corridor. Back to the bucket. The floor isn't clean yet. It may never be. That's the secret no one says aloud. You can never scrub enough. Not really. The dirt always wins. You drop to your knees again. And just as your fingers dip back into the cold, soapy water, a bell rings, not the meal bell. A different one. A sharper one. Punishment bell. Someone has done something wrong. And that changes the air. The punishment bell rings once, loud and deliberate, and the sound slides across the stone walls like a blade. Every body in the corridor pauses. Brushes hang still in midair. The boy next to you stiffens. Even the old man in the corner, who's been muttering to himself all morning, falls quiet. You don't know what it means exactly, but you know it means someone is about to suffer. And the cruel part is, everyone listens. You stand when told. You're not given an explanation. You're simply marched with the others, silent line. Same tunics. Same dread, toward a side hall you've never noticed before. The ceiling dips lower here. The lamps flicker a little more aggressively. And the walls feel like they're leaning in. You enter a small room that might have once been a closet. It's bare. One chair in the center. A cracked bucket in the corner. And beside it, a man with a small ledger and a hard face. Like someone carved from dried out bread. The offender's already there, a girl. No older than 16. Her shoulders are sharp and drawn up. Her hands clasped behind her back. Her face is blank in that way that means she's bracing for something. Her tunic hangs loosely on her frame. And there's a bruise forming on her left cheekbone. Old. Maybe. Maybe not. Her crime? According to the man with the ledger. Loitering during work hours. She was seen leaning against a wall instead of ironing linens. A sin so small you could mistake it for breathing. Historically, workhouse punishments were rarely physical, but they were psychological masterpieces. Extra chores, bread and water diets, isolation, public shame. The idea was not to break the body, but the will. And historians still argue whether these disciplinary measures were meant to teach or torment. In this case, she's given solitary confinement for 6 hours in the box. You don't know what that means yet. But when they open the door to it, you learn quickly. The box is a cupboard. A real one. Wooden walls. No window. A bench no wider than a plank. No light. No space to lie down. The air inside smells like breath and mildew. The girl doesn't protest. She just walks in, and they shut the door behind her. The latch clicks. You hear her breath catch. That's it. You are dismissed with no further explanation. No discussion. Just a look that says, "This is what happens." You walk back in silence. But the silence has changed. It feels heavier now, like a quilt soaked through. Even your own thoughts feel guilty. You didn't do anything, but you didn't stop it either. And just as you're about to return to your corridor and your brush and your unending square of stone to scrub, someone taps your shoulder. "Inspection," says the porter. "Master wants to see the ward." And now it's your turn to be watched. You line up with the rest of your dormitory. Everyone stands straight, spines stiff. Chins up, like soldiers at some war they never enlisted in. The master enters. Same man as your first day. Grimshaw. His name still fits him like a glove. He walks slowly, deliberately. His eyes scan you all like he's checking inventory. You wonder what he's looking for. Dirty collars? Sagging shoulders? Thoughts? He stops in front of you. Not for long, just long enough to make your stomach twist. Posture. He says quietly. You try. You lift your chin, straighten your spine. Your knees scream. He moves on. You exhale. One of the men 2 places down gets pulled out of line. His tunic is slightly damp, sweat. Maybe he spilled water. It doesn't matter. He's taken away for inspection. And that's the real punishment of the workhouse, the not knowing. Not knowing what earns mercy. Not knowing what earns pain. Not knowing if tomorrow will be better or exactly the same. You return to your scrub bucket. The water is colder now. The brush heavier. The same boy from earlier drops beside you again. He doesn't say anything, but his hands work fast. Maybe he's afraid he'll end up in the box too. You try to focus on the rhythm, the motion, scrub, dip, scrub, but your mind won't settle. What happens if you loiter? If your back gives out? If your tunic is wrinkled? What happens when you're too tired to care? You don't want to find out. So you work. And just as the light from the high window begins to change, from that yellowy afternoon hue to the cooler blue of evening, the whistle blows again. This time it's for supper. You rise slowly. Your knees click again. Maybe they always will now. You join the line. Again. Same dining hall. Same bowl. Same gruel. But tonight, it tastes a little colder. A little more like defeat. And just as you scrape the last gray smear from the bottom of your bowl, someone whispers beside you, "They left her in the box overnight once." You don't ask who. You don't ask why. You just grip your spoon a little tighter and pray it's not your turn next. The next morning begins not with a bell, but with a draft. A cold wind slips in through the warped wooden window panes and brushes across your face like a ghost with unfinished business. You shiver before you're even awake. Your arms curl instinctively toward your chest. And for a moment, half dreaming, you imagine yourself in a proper bed. Blankets, warmth, silence. But then the coughs start again, those familiar morning coughs. Like a sad orchestra tuning up. The straw mattress shifts beneath you as someone else rises. And the illusion breaks. You're back in the dormitory. The smell of unwashed wool, old breath, and sour air wraps itself around you like a second skin. Your feet hit the cold stone floor. There's no time for stretching. No time for staring out the window. Just time to get in line. Again. Today's assignment? The stonebreaker's yard. You've heard whispers. Everyone dreads it. Even the old-timers with faces like cracked leather go quiet when it's mentioned. They say the stones are endless. That they don't just wear you down, they erase you. Bit by bit, flake by flake, until there's nothing left but calluses and silence. You're handed a hammer. It's heavier than it looks. The handle is worn smooth by thousands of other hands. And the metal head is speckled with dents. You try to find a comfortable grip. But there isn't one. It's not a tool, it's a sentence. The yard itself is bare. High walls. No shade. A pile of large stones on one end. And a pile of smaller stones on the other. Your job is to move the first into the second. By force. You take your place beside a few others. A boy maybe a year older than you. A man who might have once been strong. And a woman with shoulders knotted from years of swinging. No one talks. The first strike is jarring. The hammer meets the stone with a loud, jarring crack that rattles your wrist. You feel it in your elbow. In your teeth. In your soul. If we're being dramatic. And we are. Because it hurts. You lift again. Swing. Crack. The fragments skitter away like startled beetles. You chase them down. Gather the pieces. And begin again. This is your task. For the next 6 hours. Historically, the stone yard was one of the most infamous punishments in Victorian workhouses. The goal wasn't usefulness, it was deterrence. The stones weren't used for construction. They were simply moved, crushed, moved again. Reformers of the time debated its purpose. Was it a lesson in humility? A deterrent for the idle? Or just sadism in a top hat? We still don't have a clear answer. Your body answers quickly, though. By the end of the first hour, your shoulders are trembling, your palms are blistered, your arms throb with a dull ache that reminds you, you are not built for this. Not yet. By the third hour, the ache becomes pain, the pain becomes fatigue, the fatigue becomes numbness. You swing because the rhythm is the only thing that keeps you standing. And here's your strange detail of the day. In some workhouses, they painted a chalk circle on the stones to be broken. You had to shatter the rock within the circle. Miss it, and you started over. You were never just breaking rocks, you were breaking expectations. A man beside you curses under his breath after missing 3 in a row. A supervisor sees. He's pulled aside, not beaten, not spoken to, just reassigned to the dead room detail. No one says anything, but everyone works faster after that. At one point, your hammer slips, just slightly. It hits the edge of a stone and glances off, catching your knuckle. The pain is sharp and immediate. Blood wells at the joint. You keep working. No one offers a cloth. No one notices, except the woman beside you. She tosses you a strip of something, probably from her own tunic hem. You nod your thanks. She doesn't nod back, just swings, and swings, and swings. By hour 5, you stop thinking. You become the movement. Lift, swing, crack, breathe, repeat. Your body is no longer yours. It's a machine fueled by gruel and fear and the will to not be reassigned. The sky turns that late afternoon color, pale gray, tinged with smoke. Somewhere, a whistle blows. You don't cheer. You don't smile. You just drop the hammer and stumble backward. Arms limp, legs hollowed. You rejoin the others in the corridor. Someone has a bloody lip. Someone else is limping, but no one speaks. The stone yard has a way of wringing the words out of you. And just as you start to think about your cot, your aching shoulders, your prayer for soup instead of gruel, there's a voice at the end of the hall. Laundry shift. You, and you. Your name is called. Of course it is. You follow the voice down a side corridor. Past doors you've never noticed before, some ajar. Some shut tight with rusted locks. The air grows warmer, but not in a comforting way. It's thick, humid, and smells of steam, soap, and something faintly sour, like wet towels left too long in a wooden bucket. The laundry room is enormous and echoing, with low rafters dripping condensation. A haze hangs in the air, lit yellow by hanging gas lamps. You step inside and the heat hits you immediately, clinging to your skin like a damp curtain. You've never been warm in the workhouse, not like this. But it's not the good kind of warm. It's the oppressive, sticky kind that makes your back slick with sweat before you've even done anything. The matron doesn't say hello. She just hands you a paddle and points toward the copper boiling vats. You glance inside, sheets and tunics bubble like soup, churning slowly in cloudy water. The paddle is for stirring, you realize, and retrieving, and maybe even defending yourself from whatever might be growing in there. You start to work. The paddle is awkward in your hand, long and splintered. You jab it into the vat, stirring the steaming cloth, your face flushing from the heat. Your tunic begins to stick to your back, and sweat beads at your temples. Steam rises in thick curls, fogging the air, and every breath tastes of soap and metal. Behind you, someone is wringing out linens. A girl with her sleeves rolled to her elbows and arms roped with muscle. She doesn't look at you, just twists the fabric until it drips, then hangs it on a creaking wooden rack. Water pools beneath her feet. The floor is wet, everything is wet, it squelches with every step, and your boots quickly become saturated. Your fingers, still raw from scrubbing stone yesterday, start to sting. The soap water finds every open nick and scratch and makes them scream. Historically, laundry rooms in workhouses were among the harshest stations. The combination of steam, heat, and chemicals created an environment so intense that even short shifts left workers lightheaded and blistered. Some collapsed, some simply endured. The room was also considered safer work, especially for women, which only goes to show how low the safety bar truly was. Here's a little-known tidbit. In some workhouses, the laundry was so extensive that it also served local hospitals and asylums. The inmates washed linens they'd never sleep in, dried sheets they'd never touch. Their hands scrubbed the softness out of better lives. The matron barks instructions every now and then, mostly just reminders not to slack. Watch the corners. She snaps at a boy who nearly lets a pillowcase touch the filthy floor. He nods quickly. the front of his tunic soaked through. You see him shiver. Despite the heat, you switch to wringing duty next. The cloth is heavy, like it's absorbed not just water, but sorrow. You twist it, and the strain in your forearms sends jolts through your shoulders. Your palms ache. You can feel a blister swelling near the base of your thumb. Still, you twist. Then another. Then another. Time doesn't pass here so much as leak away. Drop by drop, like water from a badly sealed tub. Someone faints in the corner. Just drops. No warning. A girl, maybe 13. The matron rolls her eyes and waves someone over to drag her out. No panic. No rush. It's just another stain to scrub. The heat is getting to you now. Your vision swims slightly every time you straighten up. You try not to breathe too deeply. The air is too thick, but shallow breaths don't bring much relief either. You feel like you're slowly being boiled from the inside. Still, you keep working. You notice the girl beside you again. The same one from earlier. Her hands are raw. You see where the skin has cracked on her knuckles. Little red lines like spider webs. She notices you looking and shrugs. Better than the stone yard. She mutters. Her voice is hoarse. Probably from the steam, or the silence. You nod. Not because you agree. Just because nodding is easier than disagreeing. Later, you'll learn she's been in the workhouse for almost a year. Came in after her father died. No one else would take her. She's 16 but looks older. Or younger. It's hard to tell here. The workhouse ages everyone differently. You both return to your tasks. The silence resumes. Only the bubbling of the vats and the rhythmic squelch of footfalls on soaked stone break the monotony. You're moved to folding next. Still hot, still wet, but different. The cloth is heavy in your arms. And some pieces are still too warm to touch. You fold with numb fingers and eyes that won't stop blinking. And here comes your scholarly debate for the day. Historians still discuss whether assigning lighter indoor tasks to girls and women was an act of mercy or surveillance. Was it to protect them, or to keep them under closer watch? Hard to say. The laundry was warm, but the walls had ears. Even now, you feel the matron's gaze pass over you like a candle flame. Finally, mercifully, a bell rings. It's the end of shift tone. Quieter than the punishment bell. Still sharp. Still final. You're not told to leave. Everyone just knows. You put down the paddle. Wipe your hands on your tunic. Though it doesn't help. Everything is wet. You step outside into the corridor and the cooler air rushes over your face like a kiss. A cold, uncaring one, but a kiss nonetheless. Your hands shake. Your shirt clings. Your lungs ache. But the laundry is done. And just as you think you might make it back to your bed without collapsing, the matron calls out one final word. Inspection. Of course. The word, inspection, echoes through the corridor like a stone dropped into still water. You freeze mid-step. So do the others. The girl from the laundry stiffens. Her arms still dripping from the last bundle of linens she wrung out. You're herded like sheep into a long, narrow room you haven't seen before. The air inside is oddly still. Like the building itself is holding its breath. A long wooden table sits along one wall, covered in papers, and beside it, a single gas lamp flickers with quiet menace. In front of the table stands the master, Grimshaw. Again, he's flanked by two other figures, both in overcoats too clean for this place. One scribbles with a metal pen that catches the light. The other watches with a mild frown, like someone deciding between two bruised apples. You line up, tunics damp, hands sore, cheeks still flushed from the laundry's steam. There's a strange vulnerability to it, being evaluated not for skill or spirit, but for posture, cleanliness, and how well you've adapted to being invisible. Grimshaw clears his throat. Inspection is a formality, he says, in a tone that suggests it's anything but. We ensure discipline, hygiene, and morale. That last word sounds like a joke that no one's allowed to laugh at. The pen scribbler nods, then steps forward. Hands, he says. You raise your palms. They're still red, wrinkled from water, A thin line of soap scum traces your left wrist. You notice a raw patch you hadn't seen earlier. It stings now that you've acknowledged it. He doesn't comment, just writes something down and moves on. They check everything. Hair, what's left of it. Fingernails, tunic seams, even the backs of your ankles. You start to wonder if they're looking for lice or simply any sign that you might still feel shame. Behind you, someone shifts. Grimshaw turns sharply. Stillness. He snaps. The room freezes again. Your legs ache from standing. Your shoulders twitch involuntarily, but you force them still. It's like trying not to blink during a windstorm. And here's your historical nugget. These inspections weren't about health. Not really. They were about power. Workhouse boards across Victorian England believed cleanliness was next to godliness, but only when enforced. Filth was a moral failing. Dirt meant laziness. And poor people, as the logic went, were only ever a few brushstrokes away from sin. That's why even something like a frayed cuff could result in reprimand. Or worse, some inspectors believed visible wear on clothing meant deliberate neglect. As if you had some secret stash of fine tailoring hidden beneath your mattress. Face, says the penman. You look up. His eyes scan your cheekbones. Your brow. You try not to breathe. His mouth twitches, not a smile, but a decision. He nods slightly and steps back. That's it. You passed. For now. They move down the line. The girl from the laundry isn't so lucky. They find a tear near the shoulder seam of her tunic. Small, barely there. She hadn't noticed, or maybe she had and hoped they wouldn't. Grimshaw frowns. Damage? She nods, too tired to make excuses. He turns to the porter. Repair shift. Strip and mend. It's not physical punishment, but it might as well be. She'll have to spend the evening sewing her own clothes under the watchful eye of a matron. No supper until it's done. And if the stitching's uneven? More mending tomorrow. On someone else's garments. There's your odd tidbit. In some workhouses, girls were punished by making them stitch white thread into black cloth. Then unpick it and do it again. Over and over. A kind of penance with no product. Just a lesson in futility. You're dismissed with a nod. You don't wait. You move. Your feet carry you back toward the dormitory. Though every step feels like someone else's. Your legs are wooden. Your arms hang heavy. Even your breath is slow and strange. As if you've forgotten how to inhale unless someone tells you it's allowed. Inside, the room is dim. Beds lined like gravestones. The familiar coughs. The rustling straw. The sound of someone muttering prayers. You sit down on your cot and feel the pain bloom across your shoulders. You hadn't noticed it before. That's how it works here. You forget the pain until you stop. You rest your head against the wall. It's cool, slightly damp, comforting in a way you wish it wasn't. Your fingers still sting. You glance at your hands and see that blister near your thumb has opened. There's a little blood on your cuff now. You wonder if that will count against you tomorrow. No one talks. Not really. A few whispered words. A cough. A groan. But mostly, silence. And then, very faintly, you hear a child crying. Not loudly. Not tantrum crying. Just that soft, pitiful sound kids make when they're trying not to be noticed. Like they know crying is forbidden. 2. It comes from the next dormitory over, the children's ward. You can't see them, but you can hear them. The thin walls carry sound better than warmth. Someone is trying to shush the crying. A matron, maybe, or an older sibling. The crying stops for a moment. Then starts again. You close your eyes. Try to block it out. You tell yourself it's not your concern. That's what you have to tell yourself here. Because if you let in every sound, every tear, every scraped knuckle and missed stitch, you'll break. And just as you begin to drift into that odd state between sleep and surrender, the bell rings again. Your supper awaits. The supper bell is softer than the punishment bell, but louder than you'd like it to be when you're just beginning to sink into numbness. You peel yourself off the cot with a grunt that surprises even you. Your knees pop. Your back protests. Every inch of your body seems to creak like old floorboards. You feel older than you are, tired in places you didn't know could be tired. The corridor is dimmer now, lit only by a few sputtering lamps. Shadows pool along the edges of the walls, making the figures ahead of you seem taller, thinner, more ghost than human. You walk slowly, one foot in front of the other, following the familiar scent of hot gruel and tired souls. The dining hall again. Same benches, same bowls, same dull metal spoons stacked at the end of the table like soldiers waiting to be deployed. You slide into your usual spot. Not that it's marked or anything. It just feels like your place now, indentations from yesterday's elbows. A scratch in the wood shaped like a bird. Maybe. Or a fish. You're too tired to decide. Supper tonight is thicker than breakfast. Thinner than soup. It smells faintly of turnips, though none are visible. The bowl steams, and you find a strange comfort in that. It means at least something is warm. The spoon clinks as it meets the tin. You begin to eat. You try to taste it. You do, but your mouth is too dry. Your tongue too dull. The food just is. You chew because chewing is movement. And movement is better than thinking. Around you, no one speaks. The sound of spoon scraping bowls is the only conversation. And then, without planning to, you look up. Across the room, seated beside a tall boy with a torn collar, is the girl from earlier. The one who got flagged during inspection. She's not eating. Her bowl is there, untouched. She's stitching, repairing her tunic. Her fingers move like they've done this 100 times. Maybe more. The matron beside her watches with a face carved from brick. You wonder what kind of hunger stitches through an empty stomach. A few minutes later, the master enters. Not Grimshaw this time. Another man, younger, clean-shaven, with hair slicked back like he's trying to forget where he is. A visitor, maybe, or someone from the board. He walks slowly through the rows, hands clasped behind his back, eyes flicking from bowl to face to spoon. He doesn't smile, just observes. This was common. Historically, board members would make unannounced visits to observe the morale. That's the word they used. Morale. As though this place could contain any. Historians still debate whether these visits were to protect the inmates or protect the system from criticism. You can probably guess which one it felt like to those being watched. He pauses behind a boy whose hands are trembling. Cold? The man asks. The boy nods. Just once. The visitor says nothing and walks on. You finish your gruel. It tastes no different from the first bite. After supper, you're not dismissed. Not yet. Tonight is a talking night, as the matron calls it. You shift on your bench. The boards beneath you groan in solidarity. Your legs ache from sitting now, just as they ached from standing earlier. There's no winning in here, only alternating discomforts. At the front of the room, a man with a thin mustache and spectacles starts reading from a paper. Something about obedience, duty, salvation. His voice drones like bees trapped in a bottle. Your eyelids begin to sink, the edges of your vision softening. Your body is in the room, but your mind floats slightly above it, watching the scene unfold from some safe distance. A technique you picked up. Dissociation is survival. You catch a few lines. Toil is not punishment, but purification. The idle man withers, while the worker thrives. You nearly snort, but you don't, because across the room, a man did that once, and got latrine duty for a week. There's your quirky fact. In some workhouses, inmates caught mocking scripture or official readings were made to memorize passages overnight. If they failed to recite them perfectly the next day, no food. When the speech ends, the room exhales together, like a lid has finally been lifted. You're sent back to your dormitory. The hallway is colder now. The stones beneath your feet seem sharper somehow. Like walking across teeth. You keep your arms crossed over your chest. More for comfort than warmth. In your room, someone is already asleep, or pretending to be. A man near the wall hums very softly, something tuneless. Like a lullaby that forgot the melody. You sit on your cot. Your legs dangle for a moment, then give in. The straw shifts beneath you with a sigh. You lie back, staring at the ceiling, and just as your mind begins to unwind, you remember the visitor's face. Clean, well-fed, shiny boots. You wonder what he'll report. Probably something like, morale is acceptable, supper was warm, cleanliness satisfactory, and no one will mention the girl who stitched in silence, the boy with shaking hands, or the man who hums just to keep from crying. You close your eyes, and just as your breath begins to slow, the air shifts. A draft slips through the cracks. You shiver, and pull the thin blanket over your chest. And far off, you think you hear that quiet crying again. Still going, still soft, still human. Dawn, when it comes, is neither golden nor gentle. It's gray, flat, indifferent. You wake not from sleep, but from something that could be mistaken for it, a heavy, motionless daze that sits in your bones like the cold. Your limbs are stiff. Your mouth tastes like iron and wool. For a brief, blurred second, you forget where you are. Then the familiar cough of the man 3 beds over brings everything back like a slap. You sit up slowly. The blanket falls away. Your breath fogs in the air. It's colder today, or maybe it's just you. The stone beneath your bare feet bites like frost. You wiggle your toes to remind them they're alive. They're not entirely convinced. Another day begins. Today, you're assigned to chamber duty. The porter doesn't explain what that means. He just hands you a stained apron and a pair of wooden-handled tongs. Then he nods toward the corridor. You follow. There's a sour tang already hanging in the air. You know the smell. Everyone knows the smell. It clings to walls and skin like shame. You try not to breathe too deeply, but your nose curls anyway. You enter a small room at the end of the hall, a storage closet. Maybe, or a repurposed pantry. Inside are 3 chamber pots. Full. That kind of duty. You're handed a bucket and pointed toward the back door. Outside, the yard is rimmed in frost, and your breath emerges in slow, silver plumes. There's a pit at the far end, covered by a wooden grate and surrounded by flies too stubborn to die in winter. Your job is simple. Empty the pots. Scrub them out. Repeat. The first time, you gag. Not theatrically. Not dramatically. Just quietly. As your throat clenches and your eyes sting, you swallow it down. You don't want to be reassigned. Not that there's a better task. Historically, this kind of work fell to newcomers or the least obedient. And even though workhouses claimed to maintain sanitary conditions, the reality was far bleaker. Overflow, rot, illness, it all lived just beneath the surface. Reports from the 1870s describe outbreaks of dysentery in overcrowded wards, traced back to poor waste disposal. But when budgets were tight, cleaning supplies were the first to go. You're given a rag, a bucket of water, and a sprinkle of something that might once have been soap. You scrub. The wood of the chamber pot is stained in ways that won't come clean. The smell clings, not just to your hands, but to your memory, like bad news whispered too close. A boy helps you, maybe 10, thin, freckled. He doesn't speak much, but he works fast. He's done this before. That tells you too much about his life. Quicker's better. He mutters once. You nod. Your hands are raw. The wooden handles dig into your palms, already split from days past. When you splash too hard, the filth sprays back. It dots your apron, your cuffs, your boots. You try not to think about it. And here's your quirky fact. In at least one recorded case from Manchester, a workhouse inmate wrote that he deliberately spilled chamber pot contents during transport, just to earn a day alone while cleaning it. A filthy act done for solitude. That's the currency here. Not money, not favors, just space. The second pot is worse. Somehow, it always is. You gag again. The boy doesn't notice, or doesn't care. By the time you've finished the third, the sky has brightened a little. Not enough to feel like morning. Just enough to make the frost melt into puddles that soak your socks through the cracks in your shoes. You bring the cleaned pots back in. The matron checks your work with a single glance. No thanks. No nod. Just a grunt that means, you may go. You toss the rag into a wooden bin and head toward the corridor, where the air feels only marginally cleaner. Your stomach growls. You'd almost forgotten it could. Gruel time. Again. But today, as you sit down with your usual tin bowl and dented spoon, something unexpected happens. A visitor arrives. A woman. Not from the board. Not in uniform. She wears a bonnet with neat, curled ribbons and gloves so white you wonder how they've survived the streets outside. She doesn't walk, she glides through the dining hall with the detached grace of someone who's never had to eat in silence. She stops near your table. You keep your head down. That's what you do. But she speaks. To you. What's your name, child? You blink. Look up. Her voice is soft, polite, gentle, but there's distance behind it. Like someone speaking through a pane of glass. You give your name, automatically, and she nods like she's writing it in a ledger you can't see. She asks questions. How long you've been here, what tasks you've done, whether you attend chapel, if you know how to read. You lie once. Say yes. She smiles faintly. Good. You don't know if she believes you. She leaves shortly after. Just like that. No gift, no message, no kindness. But that night, you're assigned to a different duty. Chapel cleaning. Some say it's easier. Some say it means you've been noticed. You don't know what to think. And just as you try to sleep that night, your straw mattress still damp. Your hands still sore from the morning. You wonder if it would have been better not to answer her at all. Because now, you've been seen. And here, being invisible is the only real safety. Chapel cleaning begins at dawn. Not because it must, but because that's when you're told to report. The air is cold, colder than usual, and the sky outside the narrow windows is still the color of tin. You're handed a broom with a split handle and a damp rag that smells faintly of mildew and something floral that's long since died. The chapel is quiet. Quiet in that special way churches always seem to be. Even when they're mostly empty. The space feels taller than it should. As if the ceiling has aspirations. Pale, colorless light filters in through stained glass that's lost its stain. Dust floats lazily in the beams. It's not peace you feel, it's silence doing its job a little too well. Your footsteps echo. Your breath fogs. Your fingers twitch from yesterday's work. There are wooden pews lined in perfect rows. The varnish worn thin by decades of elbows and prayers. Your job is to polish them. Every last one. You kneel at the first and begin to wipe. The rag spreads more dust than it removes. But you keep going. That's the rule. A few other workers are scattered around. One scrubs the floor tiles. Another straightens the hymnals with the seriousness of a librarian. And way at the front, a boy is sweeping the altar steps like he's brushing crumbs off the lap of God. You keep wiping. Your back starts to ache within 10 minutes. Chapel cleaning is supposed to be light duty. And physically. Maybe it is. But this kind of stillness makes the pain louder. The sound of the rag swishing against wood becomes your heartbeat. Historically, chapel cleaning was assigned as either a favor or a test. It depended on who gave the order. Some saw it as privilege, warmth, indoor work, quiet. Others used it to monitor behavior. The theory was that time spent near the altar would inspire morality. Historians still argue if this was spiritual belief or just surveillance with incense. You reach the end of the first pew. Already, your knees twinge. You shift to the next. A splinter catches in your palm. You curse silently. A whisper between your teeth. You press the heel of your hand into your tunic, trying to work the splinter free. That's when you notice him. The minister. He's seated at the very back of the chapel, half shrouded in shadow. You didn't hear him come in. His coat is black, his collar white. His hands folded so tightly you wonder if he's praying or just keeping them still. You avert your eyes, keep working, but his presence lingers, heavy, intentional. Eventually, he speaks. Do you know the story of Job? His voice is soft, kind, even, which makes it worse. You pause, shake your head, barely. He nods slowly, as if you've confirmed something for him. Job suffered greatly, he says, lost everything, and still, he did not curse the Lord. You nod, or pretend to. It feels expected. He doesn't continue. You return to wiping. That's the thing here. Sometimes people speak to you not because they care, but because they expect you to listen. You move pew to pew, rag to wood, pain to numbness. Here's your quirky fact. In at least one London workhouse, chapel cleaning came with a catch. If you skipped chapel service on Sunday, even for illness, you were reassigned to chamber duty. God, they said, helped those who kept tidy pews. You chuckle at that. Just a breath. A sound that doesn't make it past your teeth. Your knuckles are cracked again. The same places. The skin seems to split now with little provocation. You wipe them clean and keep going. A stain on one pew refuses to lift. And you spend an extra minute there, caught between defiance and defeat. Eventually, the light shifts. The air warms a little. Not much. And the cleaning is done. You're told to sit, not by the matron, by the minister. He motions gently toward a pew near the front. You hesitate, but obey. He sits 2 rows back. Voice softer now. Did you speak with the visitor yesterday? You freeze. A second too long. I answered her. You reply. He hums. A sound that might mean approval. She keeps records. He says. Children who read. Those who behave. You nod, heart tapping lightly against your ribs. And those who lie. Your breath catches. He smiles faintly. You said you could read. You don't reply. He leans forward, eyes kind in a way that makes you suspicious. Don't worry. It can be taught. A long pause. He continues. Come to the chapel tomorrow. After duties. I'll teach you. You don't know what to say. It sounds like hope. But in the workhouse, even hope carries splinters. You nod again. He rises. Doesn't look back. You stay seated for a moment longer. Unsure whether you've just been granted a blessing or marked. And just as you return to the dormitory, someone brushes past you. The laundry girl. Her tunic newly patched. Her eyes hollow. They're watching you now, she says, without turning. Then she's gone. You sit on your cot. Your fingers still ache. Your chest tightens. And just as you lie back on the straw, the bell rings again. The bell that rings this time is for sick call. You're not sick. Not in the way that qualifies. Not fevered. Not bedbound. But something in you aches, quietly. Constantly. Like a song with no chorus. It's in your back. Your wrists. Your eyes. You think about faking a cough. Just once. Just loud enough to maybe be sent to the infirmary. But then you remember the infirmary is colder than the dormitory. And it smells worse. So you stay quiet. Your assigned task today is simple. Attend to the men's ward. Which sounds official, noble, even. It's not. It means changing out chamber pots, wiping floors, fetching bowls of weak broth, and being silently stared at by faces pale with hunger or grief or both. It's less a hospital and more a waiting room for those who are too poor to die anywhere else. The ward is tucked at the back of the workhouse. Beyond the kitchen, you walk slowly down the hall, each footstep dragging just slightly. Your breath fogs in front of you, indoors. That's the temperature we're talking about. The door opens with a groan. Inside, the air is warm, but stale, thick with breath and old wool. The smell is a sour mix of mildew, sweat, broth, and something less easy to name. A slow, creeping kind of rot that clings to the corners. There are 12 cots. 10 are filled. Most of the men are older, some impossibly so. They lie beneath thin blankets, eyes closed or staring into nothing. One hums to himself. Another coughs wetly into a rag that he hides beneath his pillow afterward. You begin your tasks. The first man needs help sitting up. His hands shake. You place the bowl of broth near him. And he nods without words. His eyes are yellowed at the edges. The next one is asleep. Or pretending. You adjust his blanket. It smells faintly of vinegar. You decide not to ask why. And then there's the man by the window. He looks at you. Not through you. At you. His face is sharp, cheekbones like cliffs, and his eyes are bright in that way people's eyes sometimes are when everything else is fading. You're new, he says. You nod. Don't let them break you. He whispers. Then he turns back to the window. You don't speak again. Historically, workhouse infirmaries were understaffed, underheated, and barely stocked. The official term was medical relief. But few who entered found much relief. Records from the 1860s describe men dying of exposure while under blankets. Women giving birth with only vinegar and linen scraps to ease the pain. And in some wards, the dead weren't removed until morning. Because it was more efficient that way. You don't know if that's true here. You hope not. But you glance at the corner cot. The one with no occupant. Just a blanket pulled neatly over a lump that might be pillows. Or not. You look away. Here's your quirky tidbit. One workhouse doctor prescribed laughter as a form of treatment. He'd read a journal article that suggested cheerful diversion might cure melancholy. So he'd walk the wards, telling old stage jokes. The inmates didn't laugh, but they smiled. Sometimes, you wipe a tray, rinse a spoon, mop a corner of the floor where something brown has dried. You don't ask what it was. Your hands ache again. Of course they do. The man by the window hasn't moved. He still looks outside, where the trees are bare and a crow perches on the low wall. The sky is the same dull iron it always is. You wonder what he sees. Maybe not the crow. Maybe a memory. You bring him a cloth and offer it. He takes it. His hand brushes yours. His skin is paper thin and warm. Do you dream? He asks. So softly you almost miss it. You pause. Yes. You answer. He nods. Don't stop. That's all. By noon, the porter comes to check your work. He glances around, nods, says nothing. You're dismissed. You return to the corridor. It's colder now. The contrast hits you like a splash of winter water. The infirmary's air may have been foul, but it was at least warm. This is crisp and biting. Your fingers curl into your sleeves. You walk back toward the dormitory. On the way, you pass the chapel. The minister stands at the doorway. He doesn't speak, just lifts a hand in greeting. You nod back, still not sure if you're being blessed or catalogued. That night, the dormitory feels smaller, or maybe just more full. Everyone seems to be breathing louder. Someone snores. Another mutters in their sleep. You lie on your back, staring at the ceiling beams, following the cracks like a road map to somewhere far away. You hear the bell ring in the children's ward. Then silence. Then crying. Again. Always. And just as you begin to drift, your eyes heavy, your body buzzing from 1,000 quiet pains, you see it. Your own hands. Split. Red. Cracked. But still yours. Still working. Still here. Today starts differently. No bell. No barked orders. Just a quiet knock on the dormitory door and a figure in the shadows calling your name. You sit up slowly, confused. Everyone else is still asleep, or pretending to be. The man at the door holds a small lantern, and behind its flickering glow, you recognize him, the minister. Time to learn, he says. Your heart lifts a little. Not much, just enough to register. You swing your legs over the edge of the cot. Your joints protest. Your blanket falls to the floor. You don't pick it up. In the corridor, your footsteps echo beside his. He walks silently, his shoes hardly making a sound. Yours slap faintly, still damp from yesterday's spilled water or today's early frost. It's hard to tell anymore. The chapel is dark except for one oil lamp set on the table near the pulpit. There's a small bench beside it. And on the bench, a book. The Bible. Of course. He gestures for you to sit. You do. He opens the book to a random page, Genesis. Maybe. Or Matthew. You're not looking at the words yet. You're looking at the lines. The shapes. The letters blur a little. Some familiar. Some alien. He places his finger beneath a short sentence. Try this. You squint. Your mouth moves. Your voice stutters. The first word, in, you know. Easy. It rolls out like a pebble. The next, you hesitate. Then guess. He nods. Good. The third, beginning, you fumble. Try once. Again. He doesn't correct you. Just waits. Eventually, you give up and glance at him. Say it with me. He offers. You do. You both whisper it. Slowly. Like a secret that's too fragile to be spoken aloud. Historically, literacy was rare among workhouse inmates. Children were often given basic instruction. But adults, especially laborers, were considered a lost cause. Teaching them to read was controversial. Some believed it wasted time and encouraged rebellion. Others thought it gave them dignity. Historians still debate whether the few reading programs that existed were acts of mercy or maintenance. You read another sentence, then a third. It's hard, not just because of the words, but because of what they represent. Memory, possibility, something outside these walls. Here's your curious fact. In at least one Yorkshire workhouse, a reading circle was banned after inmates began composing poetry. The board claimed it encouraged unproductive thought. The leader of the group was reassigned to stone breaking. The poetry disappeared. The stones remained. You finish the page. The minister nods, then closes the book. That's enough for now, he says. You don't want to go. Not because the lesson is thrilling, but because this room is quiet. The air doesn't smell of sweat or soap. Your hands are busy, but not blistered. It feels calm, a dangerous luxury. He places the book back on the shelf and hands you a folded scrap of paper. A hymn, just 3 lines. Try to read this, he says. Tonight, if you can. You nod, tucking it into your tunic pocket like it's treasure. And maybe it is. You return to the dormitory just as the others are stirring. One man yawns so wide his jaw pops. Another groans, rubbing his neck like it's made of rust. The porter enters, barking orders. You're assigned to kitchen prep. Another kind of test. You report to the kitchen, where a matron hands you a knife with a handle so worn it feels like holding a toothpick. There's a sack of turnips on the floor. Your job is simple. Peel them, all of them. You kneel, back curled, and begin. The knife is dull. Your fingers are still stiff from scrubbing. Every turnip resists in its own special way. One is oddly shaped, like a crooked nose. Another is soft in the middle. You set it aside, knowing better than to ask what happens to the bad ones. They all end up in the pot. Eventually, you peel and think of the words from the page. In the beginning, what comes next? Was the word. That's right. You repeat it to yourself. Softly, like a prayer. The knife slips, just slightly. You nick your thumb. A small bead of blood rises. You press it to your apron. No one notices. By midday, your lap is full of peels. Your knees are numb. The turnips are done. The matron takes the sack without thanks. You stretch your back and feel the crack all the way to your ears. You're dismissed. You sit in the yard for a moment. Just one. No one tells you to move. No one tells you not to. The sun is trying to shine, half-hearted. Like someone being polite. A breeze cuts across the courtyard, lifting your hair. Dry now. For once, you take out the scrap of paper. The hymn waits. 3 lines. You try. The first line you manage. Slowly. The second? You guess 2 words. The third? You give up halfway. But your lips move. And just as you fold the paper and tuck it back into your pocket, someone walks past you. It's the laundry girl. Again. She doesn't stop. But she says one thing as she passes. You'll leave here before I do. It's not kind. Not unkind either. Just true. And that truth follows you all the way back to your cot. All the way through evening chores. All the way into your sleep. Where words and turnips and prayers blur into one long dream of doors that open. And doors that don't. You wake before the bell. The room is still dark. Filled with the soft shuffle of sleeping bodies and the distant wheeze of someone whose lungs are losing their argument with the winter air. You lie there for a moment. Your eyes open. Your thoughts slow. Your hands are curled beneath your blanket. One brushes against the folded hymn tucked into your tunic pocket. You haven't removed it since the minister gave it to you. The paper is soft now, worn at the edges, like a secret too long whispered. You sit up. Your joints complain. Your knees creak. The straw shifts beneath you with a crunch. Outside, frost clings to the windows, painting pale feathers on the glass. The cold finds the cracks in everything, especially you. The porter enters and rattles off names. Tasks for the day. Yours? Coal cart. It sounds simple. Push the cart from the storehouse to the kitchen. The laundry. The infirmary. Repeat. You are wrong. The cart is older than some of the workers. One wheel sticks. The axle groans. It's already loaded by the time you reach it, piled high with black chunks of coal that smell faintly of earth and ash and inevitability. You grab the handles and heave. It doesn't move. You try again. It lurches forward an inch. Another. Your shoulders strain. Your palms burn. The cold air stings your lungs like vinegar. You make it down the corridor, around the corner, to the kitchen. The first drop. The matron there doesn't speak, just points. You unload. Coal to the bin, coal to the stove, coal dust on your fingers, your sleeves, your face, then back. Refill. Again. And again. This is your day now. Historically, coal duty was brutal. The carts were intentionally overfilled because it was efficient. Boys as young as 10 were assigned to it, their spines bending early, their hands permanently blackened. Historians still argue whether the weight was meant to teach endurance or simply grind out resistance. Here's your quirky detail. In some cities, workhouse coal carts doubled as hearses, carrying bodies to the cemetery during cholera outbreaks. The coal was emptied, the corpse placed, the cart pushed by the same hands that once cleaned chamber pots. You wonder if your cart has made that trip. It feels like it has. You pass the chapel on your third round. The minister is outside, sweeping the steps with a quiet focus. He sees you, doesn't smile, but gives a small nod. It means something. Maybe. You push harder. Your back screams. At midday, you're allowed broth. It's thin today, clear, warm. It tastes of boiled memory. You sit on the edge of the courtyard wall, the chipped bowl balanced on your knee. The steam curls upward, carrying what little comfort it can. Across the yard, two boys are playing with something, an old button or pebble. They flip it, whisper, chase each other for a moment, then stop as a matron passes. They shrink like shadows. You sip. Your palms are black. You wipe them on your apron. It doesn't help. By afternoon, the coal dust has settled in your throat. You cough once, then again, a dry, scratchy sound that rattles unpleasantly. The porter hears. He frowns. Don't be bringing illness. He mutters. We've enough of that. You nod, not because you agree, but because it's easier than arguing. You return to the cart. It's heavier now. Or maybe your arms are just emptier. You deliver one more load to the infirmary. The man by the window is still there, still watching the courtyard. The same crow sits on the wall. You catch his eye. He smiles. You don't know why, but you smile back. Then you cough again. He raises an eyebrow. A silent question. You shake your head. A silent answer. As you leave, the matron hands you a cloth. For your mouth, she says. Just in case. In case of what? She doesn't say. The sun has started its slow descent by the time you finish. The sky turns peach and slate. The cart sits empty in the corner of the courtyard, its shadow long and bent. You sit beside it, breath shallow, fingers trembling from cold and work and something else. You take out the hymn. Try again. The first line is easier now. The second, you stumble. The third still slips from your grasp. But your lips move anyway. That night, your cot feels harder than usual. The straw pokes through in new places. Someone near you snores. Another whimpers. The room breathes like an old beast, groaning and sighing through the walls. You lie on your side, fingers curled around the hymn, thumb tracing the crease down the middle. You dream of the cart. Of pushing it forever down a road that never ends. And just before you wake, the cart becomes a boat. And you float away in silence. You're assigned to kitchen duty again, but not prep this time. Washing. You didn't know there were so many dishes in a place where the food barely qualifies as food. Tin bowls, dented spoons, chipped mugs, cooking pots large enough to bathe in, though no one ever has. Not really. You're handed a cloth so thin it might be paper. And plunged wrist deep into a sink of lukewarm, greasy water that smells like boiled oats and disappointment. Your fingers wrinkle almost instantly. The water isn't hot enough to clean properly, but too warm to ignore. The scum clings to everything. You scrub, and scrub, and scrub. Beside you is the girl again, the laundry girl. As you've come to think of her, her sleeves are rolled up. Her hair is pinned back. She works like someone who doesn't care anymore if the job gets done, only that she keeps moving. You wash in silence for a while. Eventually, she speaks. They wrote my name down once. You glance at her. For transfer? You ask. She shakes her head. For placement. She says it bitterly. To some house. A servant job. I was 15. You wait. They changed their minds. She says simply. Or someone else got it. The water sloshes. A mug clatters to the bottom of the sink. They never told me why. She adds. Just one day. My name was off the list. She doesn't look at you. You don't say anything. Because what do you say to that? You just keep washing. Here's your historical note. Many Victorian workhouses kept placement registers, lists of inmates they deemed fit to be sent out into service as maids. Footmen. Cooks. It was considered the only way out for many. But the criteria were unclear. A missed chore, a cough, a word overheard, and a name vanished from the list. You try not to think about your own name. Whether it's on any list. Whether it ever will be. After lunch, you're reassigned to waste duty. It sounds awful. It is. Your job is to empty the slop buckets from the kitchen, food scraps. Spoiled vegetables. Bones from a stew no one saw. You pour them into a trench behind the building, where pigs are sometimes kept. Today, it's just gulls. Dozens of them, white and sharp and loud. Their cries echoing like laughter from somewhere cruel. You try not to gag. The smell is sour, sharp, almost sweet in that way decay sometimes is. One bucket slips, splashes onto your boots. You freeze, then finish the job. Later, as you rinse your shoes in a trough of icy water, a thought slips in uninvited. What if this is your skill now? Not reading, not writing, not building, but carrying filth, scraping crusted bowls, listening to others tell you they almost had a different life. It's a heavy thought. You brush it away like a fly. But it lingers. Here's your odd tidbit. In one London workhouse, inmates on waste duty used coded taps, like Morse code, to talk through walls while working. Not rebellion, just conversation. A way to say, I'm still here. You think of the laundry girl, of the minister, of the man by the window. All of them still here. Still making sounds in the silence. That night, chapel service is held. You're told to attend. The minister reads from Psalms. Something about the valley of the shadow. You don't catch all the words, but you hear the rhythm. And that's enough. The benches are cold. Your knees ache on the stone floor. But you repeat the hymn. This time with others. You stumble on the third line. Still. But now you're not the only one. The girl beside you mispronounces a word. The man ahead hums instead of singing. And you realize something strange. None of you are doing it perfectly. But you're doing it anyway. Afterward, the minister finds you outside. It's getting colder, he says, glancing at your sleeves. You'll need gloves. You nod. If I earn them. He smiles faintly. You already have. You don't know what to say. He walks away. And just as you turn back toward the dormitory, you hear someone else say your name. Quiet. Questioning. It's the visitor. She's returned. Standing in the yard. Holding a notebook. You stop. Wait. She flips a page. Tell me, she says. Can you read this yet? She hands you the hymn. You nod. Read the first line. Then the second. Then pause at the third. And finish it. She doesn't smile. But she writes something. And walks away. You're left holding the paper. Your fingers tremble. Not from cold. Not from fear. From something you haven't felt in a while. Maybe it's hope. Or maybe it's just another test. But either way, you passed. The next morning begins with a chill so sharp it feels like a blade pressed gently against your neck. The frost has crept inside the dormitory windows, curling along the glass in delicate veins. You breathe and watch the fog rise from your own mouth, as if your body's trying to remind you it's still warm somewhere. Deep inside, your tunic is stiff with cold. You bend your arms and hear the fabric crackle faintly. Everyone moves slower today, bundled in layers too thin to matter, wrapping their arms across their chests as if they could somehow hug themselves into warmth. You're sent to the storeroom. That sounds easy. It's not. The storeroom is at the back of the west wing, where the wind presses harder against the brick and the ceiling leaks in 3 places. You're tasked with inventory, counting, lifting, stacking sacks of flour, oats, sometimes nothing more than burlap filled with sand to give the illusion of abundance. The bags are heavy. Your shoulders scream after the first few. Your breath hitches with each bend and lift. Little puffs of effort clouding the air. Your hands are still cracked from yesterday's coal and dishwater. A blister has opened beneath your left thumb, and now every grain of dust seems to find its way inside. Still, you keep stacking. Still, you keep counting. Still, the porter checks your progress halfway through. Nods once. Leaves. That's the most praise you'll get today. Historically, workhouse storerooms were sacred spaces, not because they were holy, but because they were the only places where the illusion of control was maintained. Ledgers had to match supplies. And if a sack went missing, punishment was swift. In some cases, entire rooms were denied food for a day when a discrepancy was found. Historians still argue whether these were measures of justice or just convenient cruelty. You notice a tear in one of the oat bags. Tiny. Harmless. You patch it with string from your own cuff. No one sees. But that's not the point. It's nearly midday when the cold gets inside you. Not just your fingers, or your toes, but your chest. A slow, dull ache that pulses behind your ribs and spreads like spilled ink. You sit, just for a moment, on an upturned crate. You cough. Once. Twice. A thin rattle. Like a rusted hinge. You wrap your arms around yourself and rock forward slightly. You're not sick. Not really. Just, not well. You close your eyes. And for a moment, you drift. And in that moment, you see something. Your mother. Maybe. Or someone like her. Sitting by a window. Sewing. A pot of something warm on the stove. Bread rising in a cloth-covered bowl. You can't smell it, but you remember that you used to. And then the crate tilts. And your eyes snap open. Back to the storeroom. Back to the sack. Back to the cold. You stand, and just as you're about to lift another bag, a figure appears in the doorway. It's the minister. Again. He doesn't enter. Just gestures. The visitor's returned. He says. You nod, chest tight. You follow him to the office near the main hall, one you've never been inside. The walls are clean. The fire is lit. There's a carpet. And a table with papers. The visitor sits behind it. She has the same notebook as before. And beside her, a folded coat. Your coat. Your name is written on a paper clipped to the front. She looks up. I've made an arrangement, she says, voice soft, as if afraid to startle you. A boarding school. For boys with potential. The words feel unreal, like someone reading from a fairy tale. You nod slowly. You'll leave tomorrow morning, she adds. Early. You don't know what to say. She doesn't wait for an answer. You're dismissed. You return to the dormitory. Walking slowly, as if afraid it will vanish behind you. No one stops you. No one asks. That night, you don't sleep. You lie on your cot, staring at the ceiling. You trace the cracks again. Follow them to the wall. Watch the frost creep around the edges of the window like a final goodbye. And as you close your eyes, you hear it again, that soft crying. Still. And for the first time, you get up. Quietly. You walk to the children's ward. The matron there is asleep. You find the source of the sound, a boy. No more than 5, curled in his blanket, cheeks red from tears, eyes wide and frightened. You sit beside him. You take the hymn from your pocket. You read it, slowly. Not to him, not to anyone, just aloud. And when you finish the 3rd line without stumbling, he's asleep. You return to your cot. And finally, so are you. Morning comes early. Too early. You're awake before the bell again. But this time it's different. The air is still cold. The floor still cruel underfoot. But your breath comes lighter. Your thoughts don't feel so heavy. There's a thin buzz under your skin, nervousness or excitement or something that's trying very hard not to be hope. You dress slowly, deliberately, fold your blanket, sit for a long moment on the edge of your cot. Around you, others stir. They don't know yet that this is your last morning here. That today is the day you leave. The porter arrives without ceremony. Just nods. Come on. That's it. No goodbye. No congratulations. No warning. Just come on. You follow. Down the same hallway you've walked 100 times. Past the peeling walls and low ceilings. Past the faint damp smell and the familiar scrape of your shoes on stone. But everything looks different. Or maybe it's you who's different now. At the door stands the visitor. Her gloves are spotless. Her coat is buttoned neatly. Beside her, the minister holds a small parcel wrapped in cloth. He offers it to you with both hands. For the road, he says. Inside, bread, a boiled egg, a clean scarf. You almost cry. Almost. Instead, you nod. Thank you. He returns the nod. But there's something behind his eyes. A sadness. Or maybe a memory. You'll think about that later. You turn to leave. But before you step outside, you glance back once. The hallway stretches into shadow. You hear the clink of bowls in the kitchen. The hiss of steam in the laundry room. A distant cough. A hymn being hummed in the chapel. You look down at your hands. Still raw. Still cracked. But holding something now. You step through the gate. The air outside is sharper than you remember. The sky is pale and wide. And the road stretches out ahead of you like an invitation. You walk. The stones crunch beneath your boots. Your legs feel strange, too light, too long. You glance back once, then face forward. You keep walking. The school is far, they said. Half a day's ride, maybe more. You don't mind. The cold bites your cheeks. But you have a scarf now. And bread. And a hymn in your head that you don't stumble on anymore. Historically, many workhouse children who were placed into training schools went on to live ordinary, quiet lives. Some became clerks. Others joined the army. A few returned to the workhouse later, broken by illness or age. The records rarely say much about what happened in between. But there are gaps in those records. Blank spaces. Places where something else might have happened. Something softer. Something not written down. You walk until the road widens and the workhouse disappears behind the curve of a hill. The chimney stacks vanish first. Then the roof. Then the wall. And then it's just you. You reach a small bridge and stop to rest. The parcel is still warm. You sit on the stone rail and unwrap the cloth. The bread is coarse, but fresh. The egg is smooth and white. You eat slowly, savoring every bite, like a ceremony. A bird flutters nearby, black, quick, familiar. You watch it pick at the ground, then lift off again. It circles once, then vanishes into the sky. You breathe deep. The road stretches ahead, empty but waiting. And just as you're about to rise and keep going, you think back to the dormitory, to the laundry girl, to the boy in the infirmary, to the child who cried every night. And you wonder if they'll get out, too. Not today. Maybe not ever. But maybe. You stand. You walk. And with each step, the cold feels a little less sharp. Each breath feels a little more yours. And somewhere in your pocket, the hymn still rests. Folded. Read. Remembered. You don't arrive at the school until evening. It's quieter than you expected. The building is old, with windows like sleepy eyes and walls softened by ivy and weather. No iron gates, no shouting porters, no bells ringing like orders. Just the distant creak of trees in the wind and the low, rhythmic crunch of your own boots on gravel. You pause at the entrance. There's a lantern lit by the door, flickering softly like it's glad you came. You knock. A moment passes. Then the door creaks open. A woman answers, middle-aged, with spectacles and sleeves rolled past her elbows. She doesn't look surprised to see you, just raises an eyebrow and glances at your parcel. "You're the one from Hollowby," she says. Not a question. You nod. "Come in. Supper's nearly done." You step into warmth, real warmth, the kind that seeps into your skin and takes its time, curling around your shoulders like a shawl. The hallway smells of lentils and baking bread. Your eyes sting, and you pretend it's the cold. She leads you to a small side room, a sort of office, with bookshelves lined floor to ceiling and a kettle steaming quietly on a corner stove. She gestures to a chair, and you sit before she's even finished the gesture. Your legs thank you, so do your feet. She hands you a mug of something warm. You hold it like a lifeline. "We keep the lessons simple," she says, settling behind the desk. "Reading, writing, a bit of history, some Latin if you're clever." You blink. Latin. That word has weight. You nod, not trusting your voice. "You've been taught before?" "A little," you say. She doesn't press. There's a form. She fills it in, asks your name again, your age, your place of birth, the same questions as Grimshaw. But her pen scratches without judgment. "Can you read this?" she asks, sliding a small card toward you. It says, "Knowledge is the light in dark places." You read it, slowly, carefully. You get every word right. Her eyebrows rise just slightly. "Very well," she says. "We'll see how you do tomorrow." She shows you to your room. It's small, but it's yours. A bed, a window, a small table with a candle and a drawer that sticks when you pull it. The mattress is soft, soft. You sit on it like it might disappear. You run your hand across the blanket, coarse, but not scratchy. No straw, no stains. You take off your boots. Your socks are stiff, but you pull them off carefully, folding them before setting them beside your parcel on the floor. You press your back into the mattress and breathe. The ceiling here has cracks too, but they're not the same kind. These ones are gentler, curved like brush strokes. You can pretend they're constellations if you squint. There's no snoring, no coughing, no crying behind thin walls. Just quiet, honest quiet. You lie there for a long time before you realize you're smiling. It's small, but it's real. Historically, few workhouse children transitioned into education. Most entered labor, but records from the 1880s show a slow shift, some reformers pushing for learning, for literacy, for the idea that poverty was not a punishment, but a condition that could be changed. Still, for every one child who made it to a school like this, dozens remained behind. You think of them now. The laundry girl, the coughing man, the child in the ward. You wonder if they'll wonder where you went. You hope they do. You hope they know someone left. You reach into your tunic pocket and pull out the hymn. It's creased, soft from handling. You unfold it and read the lines again. This time, all the way through. You whisper them aloud, and they don't sound borrowed anymore. They sound like yours. You tuck the paper into the drawer beside the bed. Then you blow out the candle. And as you drift off, the mattress holding you like it was made for this moment, the quiet around you thick and kind, you think, maybe you did survive the workhouse. Maybe not just with breath, but with something else still intact. Something that's starting to flicker again, like a lamp in the dark. The next morning arrives not with urgency, but with a gentle hush, the kind of quiet that lingers after rain. Outside your window, the world is still soaked and soft. Puddles glint like shallow mirrors in the courtyard below. The sky hasn't quite decided what color it wants to be. Somewhere between steel and silver. You wake up slowly. For once. Not from cold. Not from a shout. Not from the clanging of bells or the snap of boots in a hallway. You wake simply because your body has had enough sleep. An unfamiliar but welcome feeling. You sit up. The blanket slips from your shoulders. And you pause to notice how it's retained your warmth. You run a hand across the mattress, still firm. But no straw poking at your spine. No lingering damp. It feels like a luxury. A bed. A real bed. You get dressed slowly. Carefully. Not because you're stalling, because you can. The tunic they've given you fits. For once. Not perfectly. But well enough that it doesn't bunch at your shoulders or itch like old rope. The scarf the minister gave you rests over a clean shirt. And you wear it today. Not for warmth, but for what it means. It's yours. In the dining hall. Breakfast smells of porridge again. But richer this time. There's milk in it. Real milk. A spoonful of jam. Even, spread like a tiny miracle in the center of your bowl. You sit beside the boy from the day before. The one who offered you a crust of bread. And when he sees your surprise at the jam. He grins. Tuesday's a good day. He says. They sweeten it. After letters arrive. You blink. Letters? He nods. From sponsors. Donors. People who keep the school running. You glance around. A few students are unwrapping folded sheets of paper with careful fingers. Some smile. One girl wipes her eyes. Then rereads hers again. No letter for you. But somehow, you don't feel left out. Not exactly. You're still here. And that counts. After breakfast, it's straight to lessons. You walk into the classroom with a stack of fresh paper and your ink bottle tucked carefully under your arm. The desks smell faintly of varnish and graphite. The window panes are still fogged. And you use your sleeve to clear a small circle. Outside, the grass is slick with dew. Today's subject is history. You learn about the old kings. About wars fought on muddy hills and treaties signed under candlelight. You copy the dates, the names, the causes and consequences. But then the teacher says something that makes you pause. History isn't only about rulers and battles. He says, it's also about the choices people made when no one was looking. You write that down. Not because it's on the test. Because you believe it. In the afternoon, you're given a different kind of assignment. To write about a memory. One that changed you. You stare at your page for a long time. Ink drying on the tip of your pen. The room hums around you, scratching nibs. Shifting chairs, but you sit still. Eventually, your hand begins to move. You don't describe the stone-breaking yard. Or the endless bowls of flavorless gruel. You don't even write about the punishments or the inspections. You write about the girl. Her sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hands raw and steady as she wrung out linens in the laundry room. You write about the way she never spoke unless she had to. How her eyes never asked for pity. How she once gave you a strip of cloth when your palm split open. And how she never asked for it back. You finish your memory just as the bell rings. You fold the page. Not to turn it in, but to keep. There's your historical curiosity of the day. In the late 1800s, a few schools began collecting memory journals from workhouse children. They believed that by encouraging emotional expression, students would be less prone to violence or despair. Some journals survive. Most were burned during relocations or lost to time. What remains are fragments, half-remembered moments. Ink-blotted names. A sentence here and there. Like someone whispering across 100 years. I was here. You spend the rest of the afternoon in the school library. A place you now find yourself drawn to almost magnetically. The shelves tower. Each filled with something new to become absorbed in. You select a small leather-bound book from the lowest shelf. It's a collection of folk stories. Short, strange, and comforting. One is about a boy who lives in a well and climbs out by telling stories to the sky. You copy a line into your notebook. When you speak what hurts, the wind carries it far away. That line stays with you. Supper is lentil stew and warm bread. The other children are louder tonight, chatty. Even, you learn someone named Molly is going to live with a family next month. She's going to be a companion for an elderly woman. She's nervous, but excited. You offer her your bread crust. She takes it with a grin. Later, in your room, the headmistress knocks gently. You stand instinctively, but she waves it off. I just came to see how you're doing, she says, softly. You're not sure what to say. So you hand her the memory you wrote. She reads it silently, by the dim lamplight. When she's done, she folds it carefully. She sounds strong, she says. You nod. She sounds like someone who'd be proud of where you are now. You don't respond. You can't. But your eyes blur. And that's enough. She leaves you with a quiet goodnight. You sit by the window for a while after that. The candle flickering beside you. The rain has returned, soft. Insistent. It taps the glass in a pattern only you seem to hear. A rhythm. Like footsteps. Like a cart being pushed. Like a memory coming home. Before bed, you pull out the hymn again. But this time, you don't read it. You add to it. A fourth line, written in your own hand. And still I rise. Even from the dust. You fold the paper gently. Slide it into your drawer. Beneath the grammar book and the notebook full of scribbled thoughts. You lie back on the mattress. Arms folded behind your head. The ceiling is quiet. No shadows dance. No coughs in the dark. Only your breath, even and slow. And before sleep comes, you whisper her name. Not out loud, but in your heart. And you promise, I will not forget. It's been a full week now since you arrived at the school. 7 days since you walked out of the workhouse gates with nothing more than a name. A scarf, a memory, and a piece of folded paper tucked in your pocket. It doesn't seem like long on a calendar. But in your body, in your breath, your bones, your thoughts, it feels like you've stepped into another lifetime. Every morning still starts the same, the knock on the door. The quiet voice, the smell of warm porridge drifting up from the kitchens. But something has changed. You don't dread waking anymore. You don't brace for the cold. You rise slowly, not because you're stalling, but because there's nowhere to run from now. Only places to go toward. You fold your blanket with care. Run your hand once across the smooth top of the mattress. You've come to enjoy that little ritual. It reminds you you're still here. Still safe. In class. Your fingers still tremble slightly when you dip the pen into ink. But your lines are straighter now. Your letters taller. You've moved from copying the alphabet to stringing words into sentences. Real ones. Your own. Today's writing prompt is, describe something you've never told anyone. You stare at the paper for a long time. Then you write, I once believed the world had forgotten me. You pause. Now I believe I was simply waiting to be found. You don't turn it in. Not this one. This one's just for you. Here's something you've learned. Sometimes, what we don't say aloud matters just as much as what we do. During lunch, the boy with the kind eyes, the one who gave you bread your first day, asks if you want to walk with him after lessons. You say yes. The two of you wander down the muddy path behind the dormitories. The rain has stopped, but the air is soft, swollen with the smell of wet earth and pine. He skips stones across a puddle. You talk about books, about the teacher who sings under his breath when he grades papers, about the girl who hums hymns when she sews. You don't talk about the workhouse. Neither of you needs to. But when he says, sometimes I still dream of the stone yard, you just nod. You both do. You tell him about the coal cart, the way it dragged behind you like a second shadow, how it felt heavier on days when you were hungry, how it rattled on corners, as if laughing at you. He tells you about the room they called the silence box, where he once spent 2 hours for spilling a bowl of gruel. Then you're quiet again, and that silence feels clean. Later, in class, the teacher gives you something unexpected, a book. Just for you. A slim volume of poems with worn corners and a name scrawled in pencil on the first page. You read aloud well. He says, I thought you might enjoy these. You hold the book like it's a fragile animal. Something breathing, alive. You don't open it right away. You wait until you're alone. Back in your room, the candle burning low. And when you do open it, the first poem begins. I have walked through the dust, with bare feet and a bowed head. You stop, read it again, and again. You trace each line like a map back to yourself. Here's your historical fact. In the final decades of the 19th century, some schools began to include literature in their lessons, not just for education, but for emotion. Stories and poems became tools for connection, not correction. It was radical, and not everyone approved. But in places like this, it gave children something they'd rarely had, a voice. You whisper the lines to yourself. You even try writing one of your own. It's clumsy, over-rhymed, but it's yours. After supper, a package arrives. Not for you, for the headmistress. She calls you into her office. I thought you might want to see this, she says, handing you a letter. It's short, from the minister. It says simply, the girl has been placed. Her name was seen. She left yesterday. She asked that someone be told, if they ever asked. You read it twice. Then once more. Your hands tremble. She's gone? You whisper. The headmistress nods. You don't cry, but something inside you exhales. She got out. She made it. Even if you never see her again. Even if the world pulls you down other roads, you'll carry her with you now. You'll remember the steam of the laundry room, the way she rolled her sleeves, the way she said, they're watching you now, and it turned out to be true. You fold the letter and place it inside your notebook, between the poem about the dust and your own jagged verses. That night, you write a line that comes from nowhere and everywhere. We are not just what we survive. You stare at it for a long time. Then add, we are also what we become after. You slip that page beneath your pillow. And when you lie down, the room seems warmer than usual. There is no crying tonight. Only the soft creak of the wood as the wind blows gently across the window. You sleep, and dream not of stone, not of frost, not even of hunger, but of walking down a road, barefoot. Maybe, but unafraid. A road that leads somewhere bright. And ahead of you, just out of reach, someone is walking too, turning, just once, and smiling. The rain doesn't stop for days. It taps at your window like a visitor too shy to knock. It glides down the glass in lazy trails and gathers in shallow puddles across the courtyard, where the crows stalk like they own the place. You sit by the sill in the early morning light, warm scarf around your neck, notebook open, pen hovering. You don't write anything yet. You're just watching the rain, listening, breathing. It's the kind of day where the world feels wrapped in cotton. In class, everything is quieter. The students move slower. The chalk squeaks less. Even the teacher's voice sounds softer. Almost as if he's afraid to break the hush the storm has spun around the building. Today, you learn about metaphors. The teacher writes the word, hope, on the board. Then says, what does it feel like? A boy near the window answers, like a warm coat in the cold. Someone else says, like sunlight under your eyelids. You don't speak, but in your mind, the word takes shape. Hope feels like bread placed gently in your hand by someone who didn't have to. You write that down, then tuck it away in the back of your notebook. During break, you head to the library. It's become a ritual now, a place you return to not for assignments, but for something harder to name. You run your fingers along the spines of books, breathing in the quiet. The librarian smiles at you but says nothing. She understands. You choose a small red book with a frayed ribbon tucked between its pages. Inside, letters, old ones, some written by children, others by parents, teachers, strangers. Some are kind, some confused. One simply says, please remember me. You close the book slowly and press your palm flat against the cover. Later, while helping shelve returned books, you find one from the bottom shelf titled, Register of Placements. It's faded, handwritten. Inside are names, dozens, each line a life in motion. A date, a destination, occasionally, a note in red ink, returned. dismissed, adopted. You look for your own name. It isn't there. But someone has penciled in a line at the very bottom. Received. Unrecorded. Temporary placement. Observing progress. The words hit like cold water. Unrecorded. As if you slipped through the cracks. As if you weren't meant to be here at all. You close the book. Your chest tightens. You walk slowly back to your room. On the way, you pass by the classroom. The teacher is still there. Arranging papers. He sees your face. Says, "You all right?" You hesitate. Then ask, "Do mistakes ever turn out right?" He sets down the papers. Looks you in the eye. The best ones do. You nod, though you don't fully believe it yet. But something in his voice stays with you. That afternoon, your reading assignment is to copy and recite a short poem. You choose one called, "Small Things." It talks about rain on rooftops. Worn shoes. A hand held just a second longer than expected. It ends with the line, "Even the unnoticed things carry light." You say it aloud. Twice. Then once more. To yourself. In the hallway outside your room. The sound of your own voice startles you. Not because it's loud, but because it's yours. Whole. Calm. No longer trying to disappear into the walls. Here's your strange historical note. In a small Welsh school in 1893. A teacher kept a collection of poems written by former workhouse children. Not for publication, just for remembering. Some of them were about food. Some were about dreams. One was a list of things the writer wanted to own one day: shoes, ink, curtains, a blue coat, silence. You think about what your list would look like. You begin writing it in your head. A coat that fits. A name written in someone's book without a mistake. A letter that says, "You are expected." A memory that doesn't hurt. Dinner is quiet again. The rain makes everyone speak softer. As though raising your voice might scare the warmth from the room. You sit beside the same boy as always. He shows you a riddle from the back of his reading book. You solve it together. And for a brief moment, nothing hurts. Later, back in your room, you light the candle early. Not because it's dark, but because the flicker helps. You take out your notebook and flip past the earlier pages. The messy handwriting, the broken sentences, the silent prayers scribbled between grammar exercises. You find a blank page. You begin writing. A letter. Not to anyone in particular. Just to the version of yourself that's still curled up in the workhouse dormitory. Cold and tired and unsure whether to hope. You're not forgotten. You write. You get out. You learn to read. You eat jam on a Tuesday. You write poems. You laugh again. You even get quiet sometimes. Not because you're scared, but because you're safe. You stop there. Tear the page out. Fold it. Place it gently beneath your pillow. Then you reach for the drawer. Pull out the old hymn. The paper's soft with wear now. You smooth it out. Read the first 3 lines like a ritual. Then you add a 5th one. In careful, even letters. And one day, I will not need these words anymore. You look at that line for a long time. Then fold the paper one last time. Tuck it back into the drawer with the others. You lie back, arms crossed behind your head. The ceiling creaks as the wind rises outside. But inside, everything is still. You think of the girl again. Not as she was, tired, quiet, waiting, but as she might be now. Hands warm, eyes clear, somewhere safe, somewhere free. And as sleep takes you, slow and soft and full, you think, even the forgotten can be found. And even the lost can learn to write their way home. You lose track of the days. Not because you're unhappy, but because happiness, quiet, gentle happiness, doesn't keep a calendar. There's a softness to the passing time now. Like the air before snow. Or the way a candle flame leans just slightly before it flickers out. You wake up before the bell today. Not because of habit, just because your body feels rested. Like it's finally stopped holding tension in its chest. Like it no longer expects a blow, a barked order, or the cold slap of unfinished stone under your feet. You stretch slowly. Your joints don't creak quite as much. Even your breath feels more full. You dress with care. Still wearing the same tunic, but now it's less a costume and more a second skin. You've made it your own. Somehow, the seams no longer rub. The sleeves fit a bit better. Maybe they were always like that, or maybe you've just grown into it. You pin your name tag to your collar. It doesn't feel like a label anymore. It feels like a beginning. Downstairs, the breakfast line is shorter than usual. A few students are still asleep. You scoop your own porridge today, thick and warm, with a surprising dash of cinnamon. A special batch. Someone whispers. Leftovers from a local festival. You sit in your usual seat. But the seat itself feels unfamiliar now. Because you're not the same person who sat in it last week. You eat slowly, savoring each spoonful. Not because it's fancy food, it isn't. But because you remember what it was like to eat with your head down. Your stomach aching, your hands shaking, and now you don't. There's something miraculous about that. After breakfast, the teacher pulls you aside. Says there's been a request. A visitor. Your stomach clenches, reflex. Instinct. But he smiles. Not bad news. He says gently. Just something to think about. You walk down the hall toward the headmistress's office. Heart ticking like a nervous metronome. And there, sitting in a wooden chair by the window, is a man. Middle-aged. Well-dressed. But modest. Wears gloves even indoors. He stands when he sees you. Hello. He says. My name's Mr. Ellery. You nod slowly. I heard about you. He continues. From the minister. He mentioned your progress. The staff here, your writing. Your conduct, it caught someone's attention. You tilt your head. Uncertain. He clears his throat. Pulls out a folded letter. I'm looking for a young apprentice. He says. In my shop. Bookbinding. Small work. Mostly quiet. But it needs a careful eye. A steady hand. Someone who knows how to listen. He hands you the letter. Inside. Neat handwriting. Even lines. Recommendation enclosed. Placement request. Probationary term. 3 months. Full wages if successful. You blink. The word, wages, glows like gold on the page. The headmistress sits quietly in the corner. Watching you. She says nothing. Just waits. And so do you. Because you need a minute. To understand that someone, a stranger, looked at your name. Your work. Your effort, and said. Yes. That one. You don't cry. Not here. But you feel it rising, behind the ribs. Under the collarbone. A kind of warmth that's too big to name. Think on it. Mr. Ellery says. I'll return next week. He tips his hat. Leaves. And the silence after is soft and thick as snow. Back in class. You try to write. But the words flutter around your head like nervous birds. You draw instead. A book. A hand turning a page. A name written carefully in the corner. You. Here's your historical fact. Toward the end of the 19th century. Certain workhouses and charity schools began forming partnerships with local tradespeople. It was the beginning of vocational placement. Apprenticeships. It wasn't perfect. Many still faced hardship. But it was a doorway. A crack in the wall. A chance. In the evening, you gather your few belongings. Just in case. You don't leave yet. But you pack. The scarf. The notebook. The folded hymn. You write a new line on the back of it. I will carry this warmth wherever I go. Dinner is louder than usual. Someone's birthday. Apparently. There's bread with butter. A small dish of apple compote. You eat quietly. But with a smile. Your friend across the table notices the packed bundle beside you. You leaving? You nod. He doesn't ask where. Just says, don't forget us. You grin. You kidding? You're half my stories. He laughs. It's a real laugh. Not survival. Joy. That night. In the dormitory. You stay up later than you should. You walk quietly to each bed. Leave a small note or drawing or folded riddle on each pillow. It's not much. But it's yours. Your mark. You sit by the window one last time. The candle low. The room dim. The rain has stopped. And the stars have come out. You press your hand to the glass. It's cool. But not cold. And as you breathe onto the pane. It fogs. Just a little, and you trace a single word into the mist. Home. Maybe not here. Maybe not yet. But closer. And real. And possible. You whisper the old hymn once more. But this time, you do it with a smile. Because it no longer feels like a plea. It feels like a song. And you know that wherever you go next, whether the shop, the city, or somewhere far beyond, you'll carry it with you. Not as a memory of pain, but as proof. You survived. And now, you begin. The morning you leave is quiet. Not sad. Not dramatic. Just still. You rise before the others. Your body already trained to wake with purpose. You fold your blanket with care. Straighten the edge of your tunic. Lace your boots slowly. Every motion feels ceremonial. Like a silent farewell to something you never thought you'd miss. You stand by your bed for a moment longer. Run your hand over the frame. The wood is warm from the sun spilling in through the window. A small blessing. You leave the hymn behind. Not because you no longer need it, but because someone else might. You tuck it into the corner of the drawer. Between the pages of your notebook. You've added one final line. For the next hands that need to hold on. You step into the hallway. The floor creaks the same way it always has, but this time. It sounds like a kind of applause. In the dining room, a few early risers nod to you. Your friend gives you half a smile and says, "Don't forget to write." You promise, with your whole chest. The headmistress meets you at the gate. Her coat is buttoned tight. Her eyes are soft. She doesn't say much, just hands you a parcel wrapped in paper and tied with twine. For later, she says, "Open it when you've found a quiet moment." Then she does something unexpected. She hugs you. Not tight, not long, but long enough to make your eyes sting. And then, off you go. Boots on stone. Bags slung over your shoulder. Not escorted. Not watched. Just walking. Just free. You take the long way into town. Because now, you can. Because the world is no longer a corridor to survive. It's a road to explore. As you walk, you pass the same bakery whose scent used to haunt your hunger. Now, with a few coins in your pocket, you step inside. Buy a roll. Warm. Soft. Dusted in flour. You don't eat it right away. You hold it gently. Like a promise. Here's your quirky historical tidbit. In some towns, bakers were known to give the freshest rolls to children newly apprenticed. A quiet tradition, never spoken. Never written. A soft beginning to a hard life. A gesture that said, "Someone sees you." You continue on. The shop isn't far. Small. Blue trim. The scent of paper and glue wafting from a back room. Mr. Ellery meets you at the door. No one ever arrives on time. He says with a grin, "You're early. That's a good sign." He shows you the tools. The space. The back corner with a stool and your name penciled on a card. You don't say much. Not yet. You're too busy watching. Noticing. Feeling your breath settle. Feeling your feet find the floor again. The work begins slow. Careful folding. Wiping dust from old covers. Threading fine needles through fragile spines. It's harder than it looks. But you don't mind. Because your hands are busy again. But not with coal. Not with laundry. With books. With stories. With care. At noon, you eat the roll on the steps out front. Sunlight warming your shoulders. A breeze lifting the hair at the back of your neck. It's just bread. But it tastes like more. Like the end of something ancient. And the beginning of something true. That evening, back in your little room above the shop, you open the parcel. Inside, the poetry book you loved. The same one, your name now written in ink on the inside cover. Underneath, in careful script. For the one who learned to read their way out. There's also a single envelope. A letter. From the girl. The one who left before you. It's short. They let me choose a name. She writes, "I picked one that means, light. Thought you'd like that." You smile. You fold the letter. Place it inside the poetry book. And slide the whole thing onto the tiny shelf beside your bed. You sit by the window. Look out at the street. Lanterns flickering. Children laughing. The smell of stew drifting up from somewhere nearby. Your knees don't ache tonight. Your hands aren't raw. Your chest doesn't feel like it's bracing for thunder. Instead, it feels like it's filling, softly, steadily, with a kind of warmth you once thought wasn't meant for people like you. And now, you write, not because someone told you to, but because it's how you breathe now. You begin with a sentence you've been carrying for weeks. Even the smallest stories deserve to be told. You write it slowly, clearly, and then you keep going. Because now, there's no one to stop you. And everything to say. Now the ink is dry. The lanterns are low. And the last page has turned. You're still here, still lying beneath soft blankets. Eyes heavy. Breath slow. And even though our story has ended, the warmth of it lingers. Like sunlight held in your palms. Maybe you feel it in your chest, a little less tight than before. Maybe your breath comes easier now. Because somewhere in the folds of this quiet night, you remembered something important. That even those the world tries to forget, can find their way back into the light. Let that thought settle in your bones. Let it curl beside you like a cat at the edge of sleep. You are not what you suffered. You are not the number they gave you. Or the rules they wrote on the wall. You are the small moments you claimed as your own, the roll still warm in your hands. The first word you read aloud. The hush that held you like a friend. And as you drift now, let the street fade, let the sky dim, let the stars blink slower. Your hands relax into the linen. The scent of rain disappears. The night wraps around you, soft, and kind, and vast. You are safe. You are seen. You are already home.